Welcome back, America. Hugh Hewitt inside the Beltway today. Joined now by the CEO of Bank of America, Brian Moynihan. Brian, welcome to the Hugh Hewitt Show. You are a Catholic kid from Ohio, so we may have a couple of things in common. But you're from Marietta, so I guess you're probably a Bengals and a Reds fan, unless you've sold out to Boston teams. What is it?
Well, two things to that. One, I was a Reds fan for sure, and I was probably a Bengals fan more than a Browns fan. But unfortunately, having lived in New England and my family all growing up there, and the success of the teams has led me to be a Patriots fan and a Red Sox fan, and etc. But
Well,
they're
that's a
fun. It was a fun
bad,
place to
bad
grow up.
start. That's a
Oh,
terrible start.
I would.
But
Well,
I
you're
do
from
know. I
Warren,
got to say
Ohio. I
one thing.
understand. So,
Yeah. Buckeyes have got a lot in common. I got to always
yeah.
declare before an interview, my son's sister in law works for you, but you don't know that. And I'm not going to tell you her name, so there's no conflict. And I think you probably
Okay.
worked with Regina Pisa back in your Fleet days, and she's a very dear friend. And so we're not going to talk about Fleet days. But I do want to
Okay.
begin by asking you how Brown managed to escape the terrible troubles that have. You are the Chancellor of Brown now, and we're going to talk mostly economics and the Bank of America. But how has Brown managed to escape the troubles of my alma mater, Harvard, and your alma mater, Notre Dame, and Brown? How did that happen?
Well, at the end of the day, every business organization has to have great leadership. So I'm the chair of the board, but our president Chris Paxson, who just frankly agreed to uh, uh, stay on for a couple extra years, which is terrific and a great thing for Brown. We just released yesterday, has done a great job of managing through this, and I think her credibility with the students and the faculty and her discipline has allowed Brown to fare well. And they've when people have done things that were counter to the values of the institution, they took them to task, and they so she's just done a great job managing through it. And I think, look, at the end of the day, what these universities do is unbelievable, making individuals like you and me better. Coming from both of us from Ohio, from relatively small towns into that atmosphere, be able to do what we're doing, the research they do, and we got to get this sorted out because these institutions need to be there, be successful for America to be successful. They add to America's success.
I think the ones that I'm from has to get back on the track, but the one you're from never got off of it. So I'm glad of that, and congratulations to your board and your leader. Let me ask you about Bank of America, and the hardest question
Sure.
first. President Trump accused Bank of America of debanking conservatives. Did that actually happen?
No, we don't know. We have 70 million consumers. Last year, we opened 11 million new accounts for our customers and new customers. We have 12 million small business customers. We lend about 4 or 5 million of them. We have tens of thousands of middle market companies, and we reflect the economies across America as the largest consumer and commercial bank inside the U.S. And so we bank everybody. Now, what the president was raising, if you listen to his comments, it was about the amount of regulation that's gone on in our industry, and it needs to be fixed. There are regulations which cause accounts to be closed because of what they call BSA, AML, Bank Secrecy Act, AML rules and regulations. There's regulators examining on reputational risk and things. That stuff we can push back in the middle, and it had gotten out of hand. And we were clear about that. We just couldn't get anybody to listen to us, and new administrations listening to us.
Oh, well, that's good. Now, is there deregulation coming to the financial sector because everything else is overregulated? Everything I've ever worked in is overregulated, primarily land use when I was lawyering. Is banking
Yeah.
still overregulated?
Well, I think in the end of the day, the companies after the financial crisis, uh, there was an amount of regulation that came to bear. Stress testing, new higher capital requirements, or always more capital requirements, liquidity requirements, scope of activity requirements, and all those all came through, and they righted the wrongs. And we've been doing stress tests every year to prove that the capital liquidity were examined. The problem is the crisis ended. The U.S. recovered like no one else in the world. The banking system recovered. Then you had the next crisis, which is the pandemic. The banking system is solid and performs well and helps America get through it and help President Trump in the early days of that. You make sure consumers got fair deals and small business lending kept going, et cetera. Then you had the regional bank crisis where people had made mistakes and those companies were liquidated and big banks stepped in to help. Yet all during that time, with the objective evidence that we were well regulated, had lots of capital, even the regulators saying for a decade or more, we have enough capital. kept promulgating rules to regulate us more. And the materiality standard was long and the objectivity. So we are looking forward to getting it back in the middle. We don't want no regulation. That would be problematic for financial services companies because at the end of the day, we have the trust of people with their deposits, and we make loans and we help people build their financial lives. But it gotten too far swung, and we're bringing it, and hopefully it'll come back. But at the end of the day, we have the best banking system in the world, the best banking companies in the world. It is a great industry for us. If we regulate it too much, we will look like some other places which aren't very good, aren't as good, and that's what we got to avoid.
Now, I make no bones about my ignorance of crypto. I don't know anything about it. I don't know how it works. I'm too old to learn. What kind of issues do crypto present to you as a banker, Brian Moynihan?
Well, I think you have to separate the transactional side of crypto, which is the blockchain and stablecoin and things like that, away from the investment side, which is uh, the cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, et cetera. And so, what you hear a lot about is if we're going to authorize with clarity that stable coins can be used and be backed by dollar for dollar reserves or treasury bills and short term assets, then and it's legitimate to engage in the business, which is there's been a lack of clarity. It's effectively a deposit account, and the bank industry will participate in that. As to crypto's investment, we got experts who can talk about that. That's not the area I'd reflect on. But I think the key, though, is if you're going to take money from somebody and hold it, and then they're going to transact and use it to go out and conduct their daily commerce, and they aren't taking any investment risk or principal risk or trying to make money off that money, they're just having you store it for them to do things. It is bank-like, so it has to be regulated. It has to be very carefully kept, or lose faith in the financial system if people lose their money because what people do with that money, et cetera. The regulation going through Congress now has a lot of safeguards in it. Regulations will be promulgated, and then I'd expect the core banking industry, so to speak, would be active in it at that point.
Okay, that makes sense to me. And crypto doesn't, but that made sense to me. Let me ask you a couple of discrete questions and then get to the big one about the economy. McKinsey, I believe they're Boston based, maybe New York, is going to shed 10% of its staff in a 2 year profitability drive. A, what does that tell you? And B, is that something Bank of America has to look at?
Well, I think, Hugh, to put it in context, when the management team came in 2010, our company had about 285,000 teammates working for us. Right today, we have about 213,000. So what happened in those 15 plus years? All the application of technology, simplification of business models, some divestitures, we were able to do more with less people. That is, that is a fact. Technology allows you to do that. But meanwhile, we didn't have to do massive layoffs. We planned ahead and we're very careful about it. So what we try to do as a company, and we haven't even, we try to do companies constantly monitor our headcount 3 years ahead of time to make sure that we're not adding people who may become uh, uh, unproductive due to technology application. It is a relentless fact. But if you look at the United States from the late 60s, till from 69 to 2019, the United States went from 80 million people working to 160 million people working. Well, think of the technology that came on stream in those 50 years, all the different, the PC, the phones, the smartphones, the internet itself, search engines, cellular service, all that stuff came on, and we end up employing twice as many people. So America has this way of redeploying the resources to other productive capabilities, and technology is one of those. I think what McKinsey's doing is reflecting they may have been a little behind. I couldn't say because I don't know the facts, but we try to stay ahead of the curve, and therefore always managing the amount of teammates we have because I don't want to disrupt people's lives. We have 7% turnover, 200,000 people. That's going to be 14,000. The management team, 14,000 choices not to hire, and we won't hire if we think that long term those jobs aren't going to be secure.
That's a great perspective. Now, when I got out of college, my friends who went into banking, you might have known Joe Antonellis, or my friends who went into banking adjacent, like Regina, banks merged and merged and merged again. My brother was a banker in Ohio. Is that era over, or is it going to continue to consolidate until, like accounting, we're down to three or four giants and nobody else?
Well, using accounting or you know pharmacies or diners, all this stuff. You've seen these consolidations, these large platforms, Coke, Pepsi. They bought a bunch of companies along the way, but there's always a role for two different types of marketing strategies and go-into market strategies. So smaller banks and big banks. And so in my hometown where I grew up in Marietta, People's Bank, I think, is the largest bank in that part of Ohio. And the fellow used to run that became a pen pal of mine because it was ironic. He came from Brooklyn, New York, and ran that bank, and I came from Marietta, Ohio, and ran Bank of America. So we used to
Huh.
correspond. But you always see roles for banks of all different stripes. Will there be continued consolidation? There will be, but I think that is sort of there's still 4,000 plus banks. It doesn't mean there'll be four. It means there might be less than we have today. But that consolidation really is because the business model, the effectiveness. So that bank in Marietta, People's Bank, has bought a bunch of banks to become a bigger competitor to us and other people. But it allows them to get scale and efficiency and effectiveness. Now, at Bank of America, we focus on our local markets. We have 97 markets with 97 market presidents who can deliver the entirety of our company. We look at what we do in every one of those markets, from small business lending, the branches we have, the financial advisors in Merrill, the private bankers, the commercial bankers. So we think of ourselves as a big company, but delivered one client at a time locally. And getting that right is actually, I think, one of the competitive advantages we have as a company.
Penultimate question before I go to the state of the economy. 10,000 people turn 65 every day in America. So the boomers are retiring. Do you think they're ready for retirement from your perspective? If you're not there yet, I'm not there yet, but we're close. You know, we're knocking on retirement's door in a decade or so. What do you think about the boomers? Do they have any idea what it's going to be like, and is banking ready to help them?
Well, so a couple things. Yes, we're ready to help them. So we have financial planning tools that we've been working with clients for many years. And whether you want to do it yourself through our Merrill Edge platform, or whether you want to have financial advisors through our FSAs or Merrill FAs or private bankers, depending on what your needs are. But one of the goals we've had is to bring the ability to do as sophisticated financial planning as we can into techniques that can be used by all our teammates to deliver to their clients, or the clients to do it themselves. So people have to get ready for retirement. They have to save. If you're 65 or 70 today and you retire, you know, the die is cast, frankly. So the real question is to preserve people's capability to do what they want to do with their life. It's their life. Our job is to help them live a financial life. We got to get to them at 30 and say, hey, a little bit saved now does a lot over time, at 35, 40, and help them think through the use of their money and what they want to save for. So our life goals program and our life plans, which is not automated, has tens of thousands, tens of millions of people, 10 million people, I think, have done it now. They're basically loading up those plans based on their goals. And what you're trying to get with younger people is saying kids to college, second home, retirement, whatever goals is to invest against that. So the people retiring today have lived through a period of great economic prosperity in America and great growth in wages and stuff like that. But if they're struggling, it's going to be because earlier on they probably didn't save like they should have. That's where we match in the 401k, at the full dollar for dollar from day one for people, and other employers do. We're trying to help people save. But yes, we have the advice tools. They're automated. They're personally delivered. They're there that you can access them. But I think the key about retirement is to actually get into it earlier and more often, so that it becomes less of an issue later on in life.
For part two of that question, from your perspective, top of one of the country's great banks, is America financially literate? 50%, 30%, 10%? I mean, I personally don't think we teach kids how to deal with money early enough, but what do you think? You run the bank.
Well, we have great programs. So we built we went with Sal Khan, and we built tools in education. Sal Khan was Khan Academy, and your kids may have used it to learn about physics in high school, or calculus, or other geometry, or whatever they learned about. So we helped them build better money habits. And better money habits is one of the most
Oh,
widely used programs to educate colleagues. We also work with high schools and middle schools around the country. Those teammates we have in all those markets volunteer their time to go in and help them. But I think it's incumbent upon our company and our companies in our industry to help people learn how to manage their financial affairs better and better and better over time. The interesting part of that is also build products that allow to sort of help that happen automatically. So we built a no overdraft checking account, which can't be overdrafted. And because we did that, that obviously puts guardrails on it. And about 40%, if I remember right, of our accounts today are open where people can't overdraft. And people say, well, overdrafts and they get charged, and that puts them, the fees plus the disruption, et cetera. Well, this account can't be overdrafted. 40% of the people open. That is a self-enforcing guardrail. So we do it with product design. We do it with education. But I think we need to keep educating because it's. I took home economics at Marietta High School, and they taught you how to balance your checkbook and how to put all the entries in. I shouldn't say because I don't know, but my guess is that's not taught with the same intensity it might have been 50 years ago.
No, no, it's not. Let me then get to the meat of this. The big beautiful bill, Brian Moynihan. Elon Musk has joined the critics of the big beautiful bill. I like the big beautiful bill because I know how hard it is to get anything out of the Republican Congress, and we can't have a tax hike on the order that would occur if we don't get any beautiful bill or any bill at all. What do you think of the one big beautiful bill and Musk's criticism of its deficit qualities?
So I think you have to sort really part of your question, Hugh, which is in the end of the day, the United States is what is the place to invest because of a series of things: the talent, the capabilities, the ability to succeed and fail, the ability to raise capital, and the tax rate, which was uncompetitive in the 17 Act. They got it to be competitive, and people were moving activities outside the United States because the tax rates were so differentially high in the United States. We have to preserve that to keep corporate world, not only corporate America, continuing to invest in the United States. So that was critical. The second question, and Moody's just downgraded the U.S., is this issue of getting the budget closer to in balance. So its growth rate of outstanding debt to the economy size starts to tail off and not grow as fast. And I think that I just read the comments in the press, but that is a concern that a lot of us have had is we've got to get our eyes and stomach aligned over time. It has not as much to do with this particular bill as it has to do how we're going to operate year after year after year. And this bill preserves the taxes and does some spending on some items. But the real question is we can't run a $1.8 trillion operating deficit year after year after year. We have to start paring away. We don't have to bring it to zero. We just have to start making it a little bit less. If the growth comes out of this bill and helps dilute down the size of the debt relative to the economy, then that's a successful way to do it. But we've got to make sure we get that growth, or else we then have to course correct on the expense side. And I think that's a tug of war, the taffy pull that's going on in Congress and everywhere among economists and among the world in the debt markets every day. Is the United States going to stay the gold standard across the world for fiscal responsibility? And how do we make sure it stays on that course? That is not necessarily the bill. It's more about what goes on around.
That's a very useful line. We have to align our eyes with our stomach. I haven't heard that before. Now, when we talked about young people, we talked about 30 to 40 year planning. Can we attack the deficit with 30 to 40-year reforms on the entitlements, which is what I think, raise the retirement age a month a year for the next 40 years? That would raise it to 69 over 40 years. I don't think anyone would be shocked by that. Is that kind of a change sufficient to the day, Brian Moynihan?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of things, Hugh. And I think if you remember the Bowles-Hallowell Commission, I think it was called. I remember that was in the bipartisan people from each side. There was a series of ideas like that, and various congressmen and congresswomen and senators. The idea is you're going to have to trim entitlements a bit, but with time, to your point, you can trim them a little bit, and it never really disrupts somebody. And the warning and the lesson for the younger people is, Social Security as a percentage you can make it more needs attached to that you, with all the earnings you get from all the work you do, may not get as much as someone else. You can do things like that, and with a little bit over time, you can change it. And then I think the government has to get more efficient and spend less as a percentage of what they're doing. And in the Clinton years, they reduced the federal headcount by 300,000 or more, and you can do that. That's good because it just keeps growing. Even though we've applied tremendous technology, just think of us. We've gone from 300,000 people to 200,000 people. Why hasn't the government gone down at the same rate? It's just you can operate more efficiently. So they got to do that on the expenditure side. And then I think, frankly, with some of the the medical costs for the insured government insured populations, both older and lesser high earners, there's a value to all this technology that we're developing through all this research to tie it back to some of this stuff, this AI work, distributed ability to provide higher and higher care. The GLPs, they may be costly now, but they can really change the amount of diabetes and heart issues in the country. There are ways that we can actually, if we keep investing, I think also find ways that we can reduce the amount of healthcare expenditure relative to GDP. And since the government buys a big chunk of that, it would help them balance their budget. So I think it's going to take a little bit everywhere, all things in moderation. It doesn't take a lot. You don't have to go off a cliff, but you have to be resolute that year after year, you just have to keep working at it. And if we show that, then we remain the gold standard. It's not that people expecting the annual operating deficit to go to zero. They're saying, I just want to see progress. So the growth in the outstanding debt relative to the economy starts to shape off.
That's a great place to wrap. Brian Moynihan, I thank you for coming on. I hope you will come back. I appreciate the candor of your answers, and congratulations on everything that the Red Sox and the Patriots do that doesn't involve Cleveland losing. Thank you for joining me today.
All right. Thank you.